Joining me now to start us off is our team of reporters, NBC News White House correspondent Vaughn Hillyard, NBC News Homeland Security correspondent Julia Ainsley joins me on set, and NBC News senior White House correspondent Gabe Gutierrez is in Newark, New Jersey, where multiple ICE raids have taken place. Gabe, let me start with you because you have some new information about these raids. What can you tell us?
Hi there, Kristen. Well, yes, New York's mayor, I just wrapped up an interview with him, and he does say that in addition to the roundup you just mentioned in here in Newark, Newark's mayor, says there were 2 additional operations today. We're still waiting to get more details on that. But, Kristen, this investigation is ongoing, and local officials, as you just pointed out, they say that they are appalled. Now, the restaurant behind me employs about 80 to 90 people each day. According to city officials, they say that 3 undocumented immigrants, who ICE say are undocumented immigrants, were arrested yesterday. Still a lot of questions about exactly what happened here, but ICE is responding and saying that, in the course of these operations, they sometimes do run into citizens and do request documentation. And whether what you call it is actually a big part of this, Kristen. ICE does not call this a raid or a roundup. They refer to it as a targeted workplace operation. City officials here, though, say that this was a raid and that these agents walked in here, kicked down some bathroom doors, and, in their words, terrified the community, Kristen.
Well, Gabe, you talk about city officials, and we heard some of the outrage from city officials there in the sound at the top of this segment. I'm wondering, are there any steps that they are taking to try to prevent these types of workplace incidents from happening, whether you want to call them that, whether you want to call them raids? Is there any action being taken?
Well, local officials say they're trying to inform the public about this, but you'll remember, Kristen, that's a very touchy subject, especially when Tom Homan, President Trump's border czar, had said that he would prosecute local or state officials that tried to impede ICE in any way. I asked the mayor whether he planned to use city resources to do that. He didn't say he would. Of course, that would be be a showdown exactly with the Trump administration, and that's something that Newark's mayor didn't say he wanted to do. But what he's saying is that he wants to protect this community. It remains unclear how this will play out in cities across the country. As you suggested, now ICE is ramping up this enforcement, and the numbers are up, at least in the last few days, when compared to just several months ago, Kristen.
Well, and following up on that point, how does this tactic that we're seeing going into workplaces, for example, compare to what we've seen in previous administrations?
And that's so interesting. So you just showed that video just a little bit ago of these migrants getting onto military aircraft. That is something that we really had not seen before. Now, we should point out the Biden administration did do a lot of deportations. They actually ramped them up the further they got into their administration, but they were taken away in chartered flights. Now the military is taking an active role in this, and as you mentioned, Guatemalan authorities say they received 2 planes just this morning. So in terms of the numbers, we just put those on the screen. Look, the Trump administration wants the public to think that these enforcement operations just began after he took office. That's not correct, because the Biden administration did. We were just in a couple of weeks ago, we were in Boston where the ICE took us along and showed us some of these targeted enforcement operations. What's different this time is that it appears that they are arresting more people per day. They're really highlighting the numbers day by day, and also the workplace part of this, that they are going into workplaces, not just homes, and that has a lot of officials in cities like this concerned, Kristen.
Gabe Gutierrez, thanks for bringing that new reporting to us. We really appreciate it. Let me turn to Julia now, who's here with me on set. Julia, thanks so much for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Appreciate it. So basically, we are seeing an expansion of these deportation efforts, and you actually have new reporting as well about the Trump administration moving to remove people who were here legally under the Biden administration. Tell us about that.
That's right. This is something we actually heard that they were working on during the transition. There were a lot of plans they drew up. Some of them they were able to execute right when they came in. Some are going to take a little more funding, a little more time. This is the end of a parole program. That's something the Biden administration granted in a number of cases. People from Ukraine, people from Afghanistan. For the most people, though, they were people from Cuba, Haiti, Nicaragua, and Venezuela. The Biden administration allowed them to apply legally from their home countries if they had a U.S.-based sponsor. And when they did that, those nationalities arriving at the southern border, that dropped by 98%. So they saw that as a success. Trump and others said, look, that is the Biden administration flying in undocumented immigrants in the dead of night and allowing them to stay, seeing that very differently. So this has been a population he's wanted to target. And in day one, he undid parole. They said they would do parole on a case-by-case basis, which takes away the legal right for those people to live and work here. And now we understand that ICE is actually telling its agents that they could put these people on the fast track for deportation. It's called expedited removal. It means you don't get a chance to go before a judge and plead your case for asylum. And for a lot of these people, they didn't go on the path for asylum because they thought they had 2 years to do it. They thought they came the legal way, they applied, the United States let them in, but now the rug is being pulled out and ICE is actually going to start targeting some of these people because now they see it as low-hanging fruit. And don't forget, they gave all their information to the U.S. government.
Wow, that is a very stark difference from what we saw with the previous administration. Let's talk about the pace, because obviously President Trump wants to show he's hitting the ground running, that he's really moving forward with these plans for mass deportation. Do you think it's realistic to continue to keep up with this pace that we're seeing this week in these recent days, or are you anticipating it's going to peter out in the next few weeks?
I actually imagine we're going to see more in the next week, just based on what I'm hearing, kind of the way that they've put the chess pieces on the board, so to speak. Right now, he's using the military. He's just engaged other parts of DOJ. But the question is, what will this look like in March or April? Is there, as I understand it, most of these people who are being arrested now, those who had criminal records, they were on ICE's list to be arrested. As Gabe pointed out, he and I have both been out to see them do those operations before. But as I understand, they took what they would have done over a month or two and have squeezed it into a week. And so we're going to see more of those next week. But eventually, these cities are going to start to get to the end of their list of these high-value targets, people who they think are threats to public safety. And then ICE will run out of space to keep them before they can deport them. Even if they have military planes, a lot of these people are from countries that won't take them back. So then it will come down to people like Marco Rubio, who can negotiate, use diplomatic pressure to try to get these countries to take people back. Otherwise, you have millions of people in detention with nowhere to go.
Wow. Okay, well, they've been saying all along it's incredibly complex and complicated and expensive, so the action's also going to move to Congress. Julia Ainsley, you've been out front on all of this, so thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate it. Vaughn, let me turn to you. And, of course, separate from this immigration crackdown today, we've heard a lot from President Trump, including traveling to North Carolina, floating the idea of eliminating FEMA. What can you tell us about this, and what's the reaction been so far?
Right. Number one, Kristen, I mean, some basic facts around FEMA is, number one, they're not ever the ones that take the lead on disaster relief. It is states and governors that are the ones that ultimately oversee the operations, whether it's a hurricane, a wildfire, or a tornado disaster. And where FEMA comes in is at the request of governors who seek federal support. That is when FEMA steps in to provide the logistical efforts to back up the state and local efforts. And then there are the situations where a president can declare a national emergency, and that is when FEMA can come in here as well. And what you heard from President Trump today was the suggestion that FEMA, not in one situation, that funds should be bypassed through FEMA and instead go straight to the states. But that comes into the question of whether it's a matter of resources or personnel for states and what those additional funds would be able to do as opposed to the actual personnel resources that FEMA is able to offer. The second part of his statement today was that FEMA should be done away with altogether, which would come back to the same conversation we've had about the Department of Education and other agencies, that it would require Congress reauthorizing the Presidential Reorganization Act to ultimately either do away with any agencies or to restructure them, including FEMA. The last time that was done was back in Ronald Reagan's tenure. President Obama tried to do it in 2012, but Congress didn't ultimately approve or give him that authority. So there's a lot of questions. We haven't heard from Republicans on Capitol Hill of whether they would support that. So today is visiting these disaster zones, but also a lot of political questions that he can bring back to Washington.
All right, Vaughn Hillyard watching all of it for us. Vaughn, thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.